Hey everybody, it's Charlie from DM Moto, and we are embarking on a week-and-a-half trip around the state of Michigan. For those of you who are not aware, we recently moved out to Southern California. By recently, I mean a few years ago at this point, but we usually come back for at least once a year or so to visit family around the Mitten State. And last year, we did it in a Rivian R1S. Now, I enjoyed the Rivian for what it was, and it was cool putting that car through a long-distance cold weather test, being electric and all. But this year, my wife put her foot down and she said, we are not doing an electric vehicle for this trip, and since we have a 6-month-old baby, I want a minivan. Now, me being a previous minivan owner and minivan enthusiast, I wasn't much one to argue with her, despite the fact that there are only 3 of us, really 2.5 if you count the size of the infant, and just a few bags. I thought it was kind of silly to have a minivan for this trip. But when I reached out to Honda to see if they had an Odyssey, and they told me they had the new 2026 model in this bright radiant red, I said, you know what? That would be a good car to spend extended time with, because Hondas are great for being simple and straightforward vehicles. This is not a hybrid like you can get with the Sienna or the Pacifica or now the Kia Carnival. This is not newly refreshed and redesigned. It doesn't have fancy rear seats. It doesn't have a smaller, theoretically more fuel-efficient turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It is simply a big moving slug with a V6 and a bunch of useful practical features to keep your life running smoothly. And that's what I was looking forward to for this trip. We'll be doing over 1,000 miles, I predict, with this Odyssey. And I also predict that they are going to be very easy miles. So by the end of the video, I'm going to go over my pros and cons after spending 1,000 miles and 11 days with the 2026 Odyssey. But as a little bit of an overview here, you all should know that this is now getting to be one of Honda's oldest models. It still has a simpler version of their infotainment. I believe it might be the only Honda outside of the HR-V that doesn't come with an optional Bose sound system, so not a big fan of that, but admittedly, we're not listening to music super loud with our baby in the back. This is the Elite model, which means it's getting you all the bells and whistles, but even that is coming in at around $55,000 or so, which when you compare to the price of something like a fully loaded Chevy Suburban, that's getting you a lot of similar features, and yes, more capability, but also other drawbacks, it's amazing how much more affordable this car is compared to what some people are paying for and signing up for loans for on some of those full-size SUVs. So let's start around in the back here, showing you some of the features. And before even getting to that, let me show you the sponsor of today's video, LaceFit Floor Liners. When I knew we were going to be doing this trip, I reached out to LaceFit and said, hey, could I please get a set of liners for the Odyssey? Because I didn't know what the weather was going to be like. This is a fantastically beautiful day for October here in southern Michigan. But it could have been rainy, it could have been sleety, it could have been disgusting, and our baby could very easily be making messes in the back seat. So despite the carpeted liners looking nice in this Odyssey Elite, I wanted to get something rugged to make cleanup that much easier. So we got a set of LaceFit floor liners. Let's pull them all out, see how they look. Just compare this giant, flexible, laser measured floor liner to the little carpeted one that you get from Honda. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, I understand that these look nice and they feel nice, but if you're doing life with your family, don't you want to have a little bit of extra protection? Slide that up in there. Ooh, that is tight. All right, so we get it to line right up with the little feet in the Odyssey. Look, you can even tighten those down so that they don't move. And it really just shows off how nicely fit these liners are. Protects the dead pedal, protects under the gas and brake pedals so that dirty feet don't get extra mud or anything on the carpet of the vehicle. Comes right around a little bit onto the door sill and the hard plastic part and underneath. Very nicely lined. How about the second row? Interesting that Honda even puts little security elements for the second row carpet. That's kind of cool. Keeps them from sliding around. And LaceFit has little cutouts for those as well. Look at that. Again, nicely covering up all these parts. Now, when you first get your LaceFit mats, they're going to take a little while to unfurl after being tightly bound up in that package. But if you get any sort of chocolate milk spills or snow, sleet, and slush, it's going to keep that all nicely contained. Very nice. Now for the third row, Honda gives you carpet back there in the Elite model. That's nice. And LazyFit gives you a nice little liner. Now, I don't like to promote products that I don't genuinely use and appreciate. For example, there was another brand of floor liner that I did one promotion with on my truck, and I was really unhappy with them, so I never worked with them again. But the LazyFit liners have genuinely worked well in all of my review cars, so I keep coming back to them. I keep promoting them. I wouldn't want to promote something that I can't genuinely stand behind. And then lastly, we have a trunk liner, which means I'm gonna have to take all these out. And this one has some snazzy LazyFit kind of metal badging there. That's cool. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay. So if you want to pick yourself up a set of LazyFit floor mats, either for your Odyssey or your other vehicle, check the link below and get you a little discount. And they make mats for a lot of different models. You get a good set for a good price and help support Daily Motor. So shout out to LazyFit and shout out to the Odyssey. Now, interestingly, it doesn't look like we have a vacuum in the back of this one. I thought that was pretty standard fare nowadays for minivans, but I guess not on the Odyssey. Okay, all right, that's fair. Something you get on others. It looks like the Magic Seat still works with the LazyFit liner there. Then obviously very easy to fill up that space, although you do get those seat anchors there. Interesting. Looks like in the back we've got air vents for the third row, as well as USB-C, 3 USB-C ports. That's cool. And then little sunshades on the third row. That's nice. Again, nothing powered. The Odyssey is keeping costs down. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate when cars have a bunch of bells and whistles if you have the means. But I also appreciate that Hondas don't often have all of the bells and whistles of their competitors, but what they do have works well. And ultimately, when you're traveling with family or doing the day-to-day grind, sometimes good execution is better than fancy features. Of course, power doors, power tailgate, and then this is kind of a nifty functionality that Honda has here in the Elite model, at least. These seats can slide and lock in and adjust to all of these different positions. So if you have two children that you want to sit very close to each other in the middle, you can do that. How we've been using it, just having the one child, is I'll load Eve up in her car seat right here, and then I'll slide it more toward the middle so that Alyssa can have a better view of her, and she's theoretically an extra foot safer being over there. You could also use it for keeping the car seat right there and then just getting into the back without having to interrupt the seat. And you know how valuable that could be if you have something like a rear-facing car seat, or really any car seat with a base that's latched in here, the ability to still access the third row without interrupting the baby seat right there. Pretty clever. Another thing that's nifty and clever is the fact that Honda has the seat belts integrated right into the seat right here, so that you can have that base locked down or that car seat locked down, still move the seat or fold the seat, and not have a seat belt interrupting people getting into the third row. Sitting in the back here, again, not really any crazy bells and whistles, just a center area that you could put stuff, some cup holders, air vents right here. Interesting. Okay. I thought we had air vents on the ceiling, but I guess we don't. That's interesting. Okay. Interesting that we don't have air vents on the ceiling despite not having a pano sunroof, because Eve's not going to get a whole ton of air on her. Good thing it's not going to be super warm. But we do at least have these sunshades that you bring up, help keep the sun off the baby. And then this is subtle but nifty. An extra little seat pouch right here, so you could have things or phones or devices depending on the age of the passenger, and have stuff there. And then obviously the big screen DVD player, which my colleague Kirk Kreifels tells me is still very useful to have, an actual DVD player. Is this a DVD player or is it just HDMI? We're gonna have to pop into the front and find that out. See an HDMI port, maybe it's not DVD anymore. Oh man, that's disappointing. Okay. So I guess you could always put a USB HDMI DVD player in there. Huh. I'll have to see if there's any vans that still offer a DVD player. Interesting. All right. Bringing the 3.5 liter V6 to life up here in the cockpit. Again, not anything super big and fancy. You've got heated and ventilated seats, which is absolutely good. Heated steering wheel, active lane keeping, adaptive cruise control. A fairly small infotainment system for these days, but it's got a real volume knob, real physical climate controls, wireless Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. Physical climate controls for the HVAC, which I've very much appreciated. Nice subtle gear shift selector right there in the middle. A half digital gauge cluster screen that gives you information on the left side, and just a simple digital or analog speedometer on the right. Some useful buttons over here for opening and closing the doors and the tailgate. Interesting that we've got dead switches here. I need to, what in the world would be there? This is the top level model, isn't it? Maybe this is just something that they, well, no, because they wouldn't have these on something like a Pilot. Huh. I gotta see if I do have, maybe there's some features we're missing. Interesting. But some nifty features in the center right here. Cabin watch. This is great because we don't have any sort of mirror back there to look at the baby, but when she's in her rear-facing car seat, we can zoom in, see if she's awake or kicking or anything like that. And we have a microphone, so clicking that on, now my voice is being picked up from the front and amplified into the back. We can even turn that up really high so you can hear, hey everybody, do you hear me now? That could even be convenient for if you had adults sitting in the third row and you were showing them around town. They'd be able to hear you a little bit easier without having to yell way back there. So nifty to have, and that'll also go through the headphones if kids or people are watching the screen with headphones on. So there's the Odyssey in a nutshell, but I have another 9 days or so and a good nearly 1,000 miles to spend with the car, and I'm sure I'll have some thoughts by the end of that. This might be the most miles I've put on a short-term press car, and we are not even fully done with the trip yet. I am just a hair under 1,200 miles done in the Odyssey Elite here. And there's an old mentor journalist of mine who used to say that if you wanted to truly evaluate a car, you had to spend at least 500 miles in it. So Jeff, I've done more than double that, and I can tell you that the Odyssey excels in being frustration free. So we're gonna go through my pros and cons now with the car. If there's anything that crops up in the last few hours of our trip tomorrow, I'll fill you in, but overall, very positive feelings on the Odyssey. Now, I do have a full list of cons, but you'll have to understand that the cons, as you'll see while I go through them, are quite a bit more minor than the pros. But a lot of them kind of stem from this idea that the Odyssey, much like many other Hondas, is a little bit more about giving you what you need and not much of what you might want, or sort of the fancier features. But my first con is the older tech suite here in the Odyssey. Now, in the late 2000 teens, this was a perfectly competent and functional system, and it still is. It's easy enough to use. It gets you what you need. You've got wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, thank goodness, on all trims, plus wireless charging on all trims, which is nifty because if you're going to be having wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, you might as well have a place to charge up your device so it doesn't drain the battery very quickly. But knowing that in just about all other large Honda vehicles, you can get a much larger and much more functional Android Automotive-based infotainment system that has full-on Google Maps built in and Google Voice Assistant, a larger screen that's very functional, I prefer that system very greatly. In fact, it's one of my favorite systems on the new car market. So the fact that we've got a $55,000 Honda here, and it's so large and so usable, it's a shame that we don't get the more advanced technology suite. And that also leads into the next con, which is we don't have a Bose sound system option. Again, expensive model, top level trim, family oriented, kind of an end game car and for a lot of people. And yet in the Passport and the Pilot and the CR-V, the Accord, the Civic, and the maybe not the Ridgeline. I guess it's just this and the Ridgeline that don't get Bose audio, if I'm not mistaken, here for 2026. The premium audio system is not that great. You can see our full review on it linked below if you want to get more of a breakdown, but it's solely and wholly average. And a little bonus con on top of that, for the 2025 model year, we lost the DVD player. Now, you still have the screen, don't get me wrong, but you have to use the HDMI port. And I've been told by parents with many children that it's so much easier to just have an assortment of DVDs that you can just pop in and have it autoplay and just start going for the kids, rather than have to make sure, okay, I've got some sort of device hooked into the HDMI port here, and then, okay, it's playing, and it's just much bigger hassle. They already had it, so why did they have to decontent the car and remove the disc player for the DVD system? That's a bit frustrating. Now, continuing on the vein of features we don't have here in the Odyssey that other vans offer, there are two that stick out to me. One, no camera rear view mirror. It's just a very standard rear view mirror here. And that means that if you have large children or people in the back, or you have gear blocking your rear window, you can't see out the back. Whereas other models and many other new vehicles are coming with nice camera rear view mirrors, which means you get a great view of the behind. Now, if this were just maybe a sedan, sure, not that big of a deal. But the fact that it's a big, large vehicle and safety is paramount, I would like to have a camera rear view mirror in the top level model. And the other feature that we're missing that a lot of other minivans have is a vacuum built into the car. And the Sienna, and I think the Odyssey, maybe the Kia as well, you can get a little vacuum cleaner in the back there that you can kind of run throughout the cabin and suck up Cheerios or sand or whatever your kids might have dropped. Now, fortunately, we've got these lace fit mats, so I'm going to be able to clean them out pretty easily at the end of this trip. But if I had the vacuum, I could just suck everything out, be good to go. Some people might find that it's just easier to have a shop vac in your garage or something, or a hand vac and clean everything up. But those are the two features that other vans have that I wish we had here in the Odyssey. Another feature that I was just reminded here after filming that the Odyssey doesn't have, that's a little disappointing at the price point, is no 360-degree cam. This is what you get for your backup camera. I would like, in the top level trim and Elite, and this size of vehicle, and having kids' toys and children around and everything, I'd like to have a top-down 360 cam like we get in a lot of other vehicles at this price point. Next con, coming in the back here, no roof-mounted air vents. Now, fortunately, it hasn't been very warm here in the autumn in Michigan, but we've got our rear-facing car seat in here, and it'd be nice to have air vents blowing down onto our baby. Instead, they're right here in the B-pillars, which is pretty much useless for a rear-facing car seat. And then you've got them in the C-pillars down there as well. So totally fine for adults sitting back here, but children in car seats aren't going to get much air blown, especially because it's lower down here. So even if it were front-facing, you kind of have to blow up. The next cons are out here on the road, and they're both fairly minor, but some people are going to want to point them out, so I'm sure it'll come up in the comments. The first one being, we do technically have cylinder deactivation on this 3.5 V6. It's Honda's variable cylinder management, I think they call it. You don't ever notice it kick in. It's very, very subtle. It's not like the older Chevy V8s where you could clearly hear when it dropped from 8 to 4. But some people are going to not appreciate, from a reliability standpoint, the fact we have cylinder deactivation. I'd like to think that Honda is going to do it properly and make their engines still reliable. I mean, they use this 3.5 in so many different applications. I would hope that it would still be a reliable system. And theoretically, we are getting improved fuel economy because of it. But it is unfortunate that you do have to put up with that if you plan on putting a lot of miles on your car. Because theoretically, and by other variable cylinder deactivation sort of systems, it's not going to be as reliable as not having it. And the last con is road noise. It's not bad, but if I'm just quiet here for a moment, even on this pretty smooth section of asphalt at 60 miles per hour, you hear those Bridgestones whirring around. And I don't know if you could get a little bit of a quieter tire, or if it's just an intrusion issue. I mean, we do have dual pane glass, so wind isn't an issue. The engine quiet's way down. Just a little bit more road noise that I've noticed throughout this trip than I would want. Coming back here for my pros, and a lot of them center around this ease of use and simplification of your life. Now, a lot of minivans do this well, but Hondas in general are some of the best at this. When you're owning a minivan, you probably have a family, you probably have a lot going on in your life, and you need the core functionalities of your car to just work and to be simple. That has been the case. So you've got functionality like these magic seats. Now, we see in something like the Kia Carnival, the second row seating functionality that's supposed to be all fancy and cool and comfortable, but in practice doesn't actually work that well. But with these magic seats, I've been able to set Eve in and belt her down and everything. First of all, look how easy these latch anchors are to get to. But we haven't been using those. We've been belting her in. And I mentioned earlier you have these seat belts that come around and stay here. And then move her right to the center, and that's allowed Alyssa or me to sit here and have her right next to us if we're feeding her or playing with her in the back seat. And then you can see how easy it is to slide this seat forward if you need to really get back in there into the third row. And then look how easy it is to simply take the seat out. Now it's heavy. It's going to take a lot of work. I'm not going to pull it out right there. But again, very easy and straightforward functionality for this car that's made life with it while we're doing so many things and putting on so many miles in such a short period of time very, very easy. And that extends to the front seat as well. Look at all these beautiful, glorious buttons on the steering wheel and in the center. That means that when we thought Eve was getting a little bit hot while we were driving, simply pressed rear settings and dialed down the temperature and a little bit of fan. Didn't have to fidget at all here in the touchscreen with making the rear climate control work. The cruise control, the adaptive aspect, the active lane keeping, the door openings, the lights, the ventilated seats, everything has been so easy and straightforward to use in this car that it makes the whole trip and the whole experience of driving with your children that much less stressful. And the little bits and storage features around, like you've got a little bit of snack storage and bit storage there. You've got storage down in there. You've got 2 layers. And here comes some, I think, back there as well. Yep, down underneath. Great functionality here in the Odyssey. And on top of that, just very little frustrations. When you spend this much time in the car, you pick up on anything that's frustrating. I really don't think there's been... I'm really genuinely trying to think if there's been anything that's frustrated me in the car. All that I can think of is the fact that there's been a rattle in that door, which is disappointing. But from a usability and functionality standpoint, A+. 2 other functionalities that the Odyssey does that not every other minivan has is cabin watch. Now, I know a few of the other vans have a rear-facing camera mounted in it, but right up here is a camera, and I can zoom right in on our baby while she's sleeping, and Alyssa and I can keep an eye on her as we drive and see if she's sleeping or if she's got a blanket over her or anything like that, or if she's kicking around. Then, on top of that, you have this function, what I call cabin talk. I don't know what Honda technically calls it, but now my voice is being amplified into the back. 2 functionalities there with that. One, if your kids are watching something with the headphones on, watching the screen here, then they'll hear you talking through. But also, if you have older people in the back of the car, then you can talk to them, be touring around or anything, and not have to scream to get back to the third row. Love that functionality there and how easy it is to use, both of those. For my next pro, we gotta start it up and bring to life one of my favorite powertrains here in the new car market. The Honda 3.5 liter V6 paired up with the 10-speed automatic. Now, I generally prefer 8 or 9-speed transmissions. In fact, 8 is, I think, the sweet spot for an automatic. But I will say Honda's 10-speed is one of the better ones in the game. And in an application like this, where you're driving calmly and you rarely ever feel it shifting, the 10-speed works really, really well. I have been blown away with the fuel efficiency in this car. Over 1,191.4 miles so far, we have averaged 28 miles per gallon. Now, I will admit that's from the vehicle's meter. That's not actually tested using any sort of fueling procedure or anything like that. But the EPA figure for this car is 28 for the highway. And it's significantly lower for mixed driving. So for us to be averaging, let's see what speed we've averaged so far, 52 miles per hour over 23 hours of driving and be getting 28 miles per gallon, that's really darn good for a vehicle that's this functional. And on top of that, the speed limits here on a lot of highways in northern Michigan is 75 miles per hour, and I've been having the cruise control set to about 80. So that means a lot of this 28 miles per gallon has been achieved at 80 miles per hour. I mean, let's see your Suburban get anything close to that. That is fantastic. But then on top of that, when you need it, you can put your foot down and you get a very powerful 3.5 liter V6 that's used in so many different Honda applications that repairs, parts, any sort of work that's going to need to be done to this car at any point is going to be so predictable and easy to have done. I am so glad that we're not dealing with a Turbo 4. Admittedly, if I were doing a lot of city driving, there would be a lot of appeal to having a hybrid, but for such a generally fuel-efficient and straightforward powertrain, I love having this 3.5 V6. The next pro is the ride quality. We've gone through some really rough roads here in Michigan, and because of the longer wheelbase, the fairly large tires, this thing really takes the bumps well, and it's got good primary ride and good secondary ride as well. So it absorbs the bumps, but also takes those larger bumps well. Very well-tuned suspension. It's a good chassis as well. I feel like that's barely worth mentioning because I don't know how many people are really hooning their minivans. But if you live in a twistier area and you're driving a little bit more spiritedly, you'll probably appreciate the Honda chassis and engine combination. But from a day-to-day standpoint for all drivers, the ride quality, very appreciated. My last pro is the price. When you're looking at top-level trims for minivans, the Honda comes in at the least expensive. I take it back. It's possible the Kia is slightly less expensive. I remember they were very close, and maybe it depends on color and any packages or anything. But from what I understand, this one is a good few $1,000s less expensive than the comparable Toyota and Chrysler. And it's great for that. It really does feel like a solid product that you can spend your money on and keep for many, many years and put tons of miles on and have it be straightforward and predictable for all of that ownership experience. So yes, it's missing a few kind of frilly features that some of the other models have, but in general, what you're getting for a very reasonable price point, especially compared with something like a full-size body-on-frame SUV, very, very reasonable. So as I said, we are just over 1,200 miles on the trip. We've got maybe about 180-ish to go, maybe about 200 by the time we get back to Detroit Metro Airport. So an incredible amount of seat time here in the Odyssey, but I really don't see too many of my opinions changing at this point. This is a fantastic family hauler. And just like other Honda vehicles, whether it be an Accord or a Civic or a Ridgeline, there is so much about it being a Honda, or as Brower and I would say, an Honda, that make it unique and special. So yes, it doesn't have the features of some of the other minivans, and no, you're not going to look as cool as you would in a Suburban or a new Expedition, but when you're talking about a fully loaded $55,000 family hauler here that does as much, and it does this so much well, like this Odyssey, I'm about it. So before we actually wrap up the video here, we are going to put the Honda Odyssey on the Daily Motor leaderboard. Current leaders on the Daily Motor leaderboard here coming near the end of the year: Ford F-150, Hyundai Santa Fe, and Honda brethren right there, the Passport Trail Sport Elite. Now, the top 5 of the Daily Motor leaderboard right now are either so universally good against pretty much every car that they deserve to be up near the top, like the Santa Fe and Passport. They're both these larger mid-size crossovers. And then you have more niche vehicles like the Gladiator and, in a way, the Armada with the Pro 4X model there. And then the F-150 is also pretty universal, and that can apply to so many different shoppers. And then the bottom 5 are a little bit more kind of niche vehicles like the M340i, the Mazda 3, the Ford Maverick, and then another Honda, the Honda Civic right there, and I guess the Volvo EX30 being 10th place. The Odyssey is gonna go right way up. Mazda 3, Ford Maverick. It's going right below the Honda Civic and above the Volvo EX30, because all of those that are above it feel just a little bit more special. Now, I'm not saying a minivan should feel special, I get that, but I want to give proper kudos to vehicles that really give you the fizz in one way or another, and the Odyssey is kind of the leader of cars that don't necessarily make you feel any special sort of way, but are still just so very, very good and competent. So that's it for me here the Honda Odyssey. Like I said, I'll drop anything else that's relevant into somewhere in the video, probably right before this. But big shout out to Honda for letting us put so much time and our family members here in the Odyssey, because we've really appreciated it. It's made this trip so much easier than it could have been with a little 6-month-old baby and a wife and 1,400 miles. Wouldn't have wanted to do it in just about any other car. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the Odyssey, check the link below for our sound system review, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.